I didn't plan on getting involved. Not my circus, not my monkeys, right? My neighbor, let's call him Derek, had been trying to sell his place for months, and honestly, the whole block knew it. New paint every other weekend, landscaping crews in and out like it was a reality show. Even one of those oversized for sale signs that felt less like a listing and more like a cry for attention. You could tell, this wasn't just about selling a house. This was about proving something. Maybe to himself, maybe to everyone else on the street. And I stayed out of it. I really did. Until one afternoon, I get a text from a buddy of mine. Just a simple message, nothing dramatic. Hey, isn't that your driveway? Now, I almost didn't even open the link. Figured it was just another one of those random Zillow listings we send each other for fun. But I clicked it anyway, and the second that page loaded, I felt my stomach drop. Because there it was, front and center. The main listing photo, bright, clean, professionally shot. A wide, smooth driveway leading straight up to Derek's house like something out of a magazine. Only problem? That driveway was mine. Not kind of mine. Not shared, not disputed mine. Entirely on my property, clearly marked in the survey I got when I bought the place. I remember that survey too. Paid good money for it. Had the whole thing mapped out down to the inch because I don't play around when it comes to property lines. So yeah, seeing my driveway being used to sell someone else's house, that hit different. At first, I tried to give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe it was just a careless photographer, you know? Someone standing in the wrong spot, snapping a nice angle, not realizing where the property line actually was. Happens, right? But then I kept scrolling, and that's when it stopped being an accident. Because the description said, and I quote, spacious private driveway with easy vehicle access. I actually laughed when I read that, not because it was funny, but because it was so bold, like, you're not just using my driveway in the picture, you're selling it as a feature. That's not a mistake, that's a decision. And here's the thing about real estate, little details like that, they matter. A private driveway versus street parking? That can swing the value of a property by thousands, sometimes tens of thousands, depending on the area. And Derek's place? Yeah, it didn't have a driveway. Never did. Just curb parking, tight space, the kind of setup that makes you circle the block at night hoping someone leaves. Meanwhile, my driveway sits right there, wide, clean, easy access, basically the exact upgrade his listing was pretending to offer. So now I'm staring at my own property, being marketed as someone else's asset, and I'm thinking, okay, we need to fix this. I kept it simple. No drama. Sent an email to the listing agent, polite, straight to the point. Hey, the driveway in your listing photo belongs to my property. There's no shared access. Please remove or correct the listing. That's it. No threats. No attitude. Just facts. And then nothing. No reply. No update. No correction. Days go by, the listing stays up, same photo, same description, like my email just disappeared into the void. And that's when things started to get uncomfortable. Because the showings began. I'd see people walking through the property, young couples, families, investors, standing right there at the edge of my driveway, looking at it, pointing, nodding. You could tell exactly what they were thinking. Oh nice, private driveway, that's a big plus. And I'm watching this happen in real time, realizing these people are making decisions based on something that doesn't even belong to the house they're considering. That's not just misleading, that's dangerous. So I did what anyone would do when something feels off. I went digging, pulled up the county records, checked everything, parcel maps, easements, access rights, all of it. And guess what? Nothing. No easement. No shared driveway agreement. No legal access whatsoever. Which means, from a legal standpoint, that driveway might as well not exist for Derek's property. And yet, there it was, front and center, selling the dream. A week later, I'm walking past his house, and I see the sign, sold, pending. And I just stood there for a second, staring at it. Because now this wasn't just a bad listing anymore. This was about to become a completed transaction. Papers signed, money transferred, expectations locked in. And I could already see how this was going to play out. Buyer moves in, tries to use the driveway. I say no. Suddenly I'm the bad guy. That neighbor. The one ruining their move-in experience. All because of a lie I didn't tell. And that's when it clicked for me. If this was going to get fixed, it wasn't going to happen through emails. It was going to happen at the one place where the truth actually matters. Closing day. That's the moment everything becomes official, where assumptions get replaced by documents, where "I thought" doesn't mean anything anymore. So yeah, I decided I was going to show up. Not angry, not loud, just prepared. Because if they were going to sell a house using something that wasn't theirs, then I was going to make sure that truth walked into the room with them. Now let me pause the story for a second, because this is where things get interesting. Not dramatic, not emotional, just real. According to standard procedure, when a property is listed for sale, the agent has a responsibility, yeah, a legal and ethical one, to verify what they're advertising. Not just the number of bedrooms or square footage, but access, boundaries, easements, all the stuff that actually defines what you're buying. You can't just assume a driveway belongs to a property because it looks good in a photo. That's not how this works. From a legal perspective, what Derek's listing was doing, that falls into a gray area that can turn very black very fast. It's called misrepresentation, basically selling a feature that doesn't legally exist. And in real estate, that's a big deal. Because buyers aren't just purchasing walls and a roof, they're buying rights. Access rights, usage rights. And if those don't match what was advertised, that's when deals collapse or lawsuits start showing up. But here's the part people don't talk about enough. This is a psychological trap. Buyers walk into a property already wanting to like it. They're emotionally invested before they even read the fine print. So when they see something like a clean, wide driveway in the main photo, their brain locks it in as fact. It becomes part of the story they're telling themselves. This is the one. This checks all the boxes. And once that story forms, it's hard to break, even if the truth says otherwise. And agents? Some of them know exactly how that works. Not all, but enough. The lesson here is, real estate isn't just about property, it's about perception. And if nobody steps in to challenge that perception, it can very easily become someone else's very expensive mistake. Closing day has a certain kind of energy to it. If you've ever been in that room, you know what I mean. It's quiet, but not peaceful. More like tense quiet. The kind where everyone's pretending everything is routine while thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars are about to change hands. Pins lined up neatly, documents stacked like bricks, polite smiles that don't quite reach the eyes. Yeah, that kind of room. And I walked right into it. No appointment, no heads up, just me, a folder under my arm, and a very specific reason to be there. The receptionist looked up, gave me that "can I help you" smile, and I kept it simple. Yeah, I'm here about the property on Maple Ridge. I believe there's a closing happening right now. She hesitated for half a second, probably trying to figure out where I fit into the equation, then made a quick call, and next thing I know, I'm being led into the conference room. And there they were. Derek, sitting a little too confidently, like a man who thought the hard part was over. The buyers, a couple, maybe mid-30s, papers in front of them, that mix of excitement and nervous energy you always see. And the agent, sharp suit, polished smile, the kind of person who's used to controlling the narrative. Then there's me, walking in uninvited. You could feel the shift immediately. Conversations paused, eyes turned, the air tightened just a little. I didn't rush, didn't raise my voice. I just nodded, introduced myself, and said, "Hey, I won't take much of your time, but I think there's something you need to see before this goes any further." And that right there, that's the moment everything tilted. Because in that room, timing is everything. You don't interrupt a closing unless you have a reason, and everyone there knew it. I placed the folder on the table, opened it slowly, and slid the survey across toward the buyers and the title officer. Now, if you've never seen a property survey up close, it's not exactly thrilling stuff. Lines, measurements, boundaries, but in that moment, that piece of paper might as well have been a bomb. I pointed to the driveway. Then I said it. Calm, clear, no emotion. The driveway shown in the listing photos is on my property. There is no easement, no shared access. This property does not have legal rights to use it. Silence. Not awkward silence, heavy silence. The kind that lands and just sits there. The buyers looked at each other first. That quick glance people exchange when something doesn't add up. Then they looked at the agent. And here's where things got interesting. Because the agent didn't jump in right away. No immediate explanation, no confident correction, just a pause. A tiny one, but long enough. Long enough for doubt to show up. One of the buyers leaned forward, tapped the survey lightly, and asked, "Wait, so the driveway we saw, that's not included with the property?" And I could see it happening in real time, that shift from excitement to uncertainty. The agent finally spoke, a little too smooth, a little too rehearsed. "Well, the photos are meant to represent the property in the best light. But the buyer cut in. "No, I'm asking, do we legally have access to that driveway? Now we're not talking about marketing anymore. We're talking about facts. And facts don't bend." All eyes turned to the title officer. Because that's the person in the room who doesn't deal in opinions. They deal in records. She adjusted her glasses, pulled the survey closer, flipped through the documents, and you could hear the pages moving, each one louder than the last in that quiet room. Then she said it. "I'm not seeing any recorded easement or shared access agreement for this driveway." And just like that, the floor dropped out from under the whole deal. Derek shifted in his seat, subtle but noticeable. That confidence, gone, replaced with something tighter, defensive. "This is ridiculous," he said, forcing a laugh that didn't quite land. "Everyone uses that driveway. It's basically understood." I shook my head. Not aggressive, not confrontational, just firm. Understood doesn't hold up in a contract. And that's when the room really split. Because now you had two sides forming, one built on assumption, the other on documentation. The buyers weren't smiling anymore. They were flipping through the listing printouts, rereading that line. Spacious private driveway, like it had suddenly changed meaning. Which, in a way, it had. The agent tried to recover, offering alternatives, softening the language, suggesting maybe it was a miscommunication, but the damage was already done. Because here's the thing about trust. Once it cracks, even a little, everything else starts to feel unstable. The title officer cleared her throat, professional, measured, but firm. "I'm going to recommend we pause the closing until this access issue is clarified." And there it was. Not canceled, not collapsed, paused. But anyone who's been through this process knows a pause like that. It's not small. It means more time, more verification, more doubt. It means the deal that felt certain 5 minutes ago is now fragile. The buyers leaned back in their chairs, the energy completely different now. No more excitement, just calculation. Questions forming, risks being weighed. And Derek? He looked at me like I had just walked in and flipped the table on purpose. Like I was the problem. But I didn't say anything else. Didn't need to. Because at that point, it wasn't about me anymore. It was about the truth sitting right there on the table, in black and white, impossible to ignore. And that's the thing people don't realize about real estate. You can stage a house. You can edit photos. You can write the perfect listing description. But when you get to that closing table, none of that matters. Because that's where the story gets stripped down to one question. What exactly are you buying? And if the answer to that question changes, even a little, everything else has to stop. So what actually happened after that? Well, the deal didn't just magically bounce back. Not like in those feel-good real estate shows where everything gets wrapped up before the commercial break. Once that kind of doubt enters the room, it lingers, it spreads, it changes how people think. The buyers didn't walk out immediately, but you could tell they weren't the same people who walked in. That excitement? Gone. Replaced with caution, and once caution shows up in a financial decision like that, it starts asking questions that are very hard to silence. They wanted clarification, documentation, guarantees, things that, up until that moment, nobody thought to verify. And Derek? He didn't have answers, at least not the kind that hold up under scrutiny. Because again, everyone uses it isn't a legal right, it's a habit. And habits don't transfer with ownership. From what I heard later, the deal stalled out. Not instantly, not dramatically, just slowly, like air leaking out of a tire. More back and forth, more delays, more second thoughts, until eventually, it just wasn't worth the risk for the buyers anymore. And honestly, I don't blame them. When you're about to commit to something that big, you don't want surprises waiting for you on move-in day, especially not the kind that involve your neighbors saying, "Yeah, you can't use that." Now here's the part where people usually expect me to say something like, "And that's why you always double-check your listings," or "Make sure you hire a good agent." And yeah, those things matter. But the lesson here goes a little deeper than that. The lesson here is perception is powerful, but documentation is final. And that gap between the two, that's where a lot of people get into trouble. Because let's be real for a second, most buyers aren't walking into a property thinking, Let me verify the legal status of this driveway. They're thinking about where the couch is going to go, how the morning light hits the kitchen, whether this feels like home. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's human. But that's also exactly why situations like this happen. This is a psychological trap, one that shows up way more often than people realize. You see something, you like it, you assume it's part of the deal, and your brain fills in the rest. It builds a complete picture out of incomplete information. And once that picture feels real enough, you stop questioning it, until something, or someone, forces you to. And in my case, I guess I was that someone. Not because I wanted to cause problems, not because I had anything against Derek personally, but because the alternative was worse. Letting that deal go through, knowing full well what was going to happen next, that's not just uncomfortable, that's irresponsible. Because think about it, what happens after closing? The buyers move in, first weekend, they invite friends over. Cars start pulling up, and naturally, someone parks in the driveway they saw in every single photo. My driveway. So now I walk outside, and I have to explain. What? That they can't use it? That it was never part of their property? Now I'm the bad guy. Now it's a conflict that didn't need to exist in the first place. And that's how small misrepresentations turn into real-life disputes. Not in courtrooms, but in driveways, in neighborhoods, between people who have to see each other every day. According to standard procedure, all of this should have been caught long before it reached a closing table. That's the whole point of disclosures, surveys, title checks. The system is designed to prevent exactly this kind of situation. But systems only work when people actually follow them. From a legal perspective, what happened here could have gone a lot further. If the deal had closed and the buyers later discovered the issue, you're looking at potential claims, misrepresentation, maybe even fraud, depending on intent. And those aren't quick fixes, those are long, expensive problems. But beyond the legal side, there's something else here that's worth talking about. Intent. Because people always ask, do you think Derek knew? And the honest answer? Yeah, I think he did. Maybe not in a mastermind villain kind of way, but in that quiet, convenient way where you see something that benefits you, and you choose not to question it too hard. The photo looks good, the description sounds better, the offers start coming in, and suddenly, correcting it feels like, what? Self-sabotage? So you let it ride. You tell yourself it's not a big deal, that it'll sort itself out, that maybe nobody will notice. That's the trap on the seller's side. And on the buyer's side, the trap is trust. Trusting that what you see is what you get. Trusting that the professionals involved have done their due diligence. Trusting that no one would risk something that big over something that small. But here's the reality. People do. All the time. Not always out of malice, sometimes out of pressure, sometimes out of desperation, sometimes just because they think they can get away with it. And most of the time, they do. Because nobody shows up. Nobody questions it. Nobody brings the survey to the table. So yeah, if there's one thing I'd want you to take away from this story, it's this. The lesson here is, if something feels off, it probably is. And more importantly, you don't need to be loud to be effective. You don't need to argue, accuse, or escalate. You just need to bring facts into a space where assumptions are being treated like truth. That's it. That's all I did. I didn't stop the deal, the truth did. I just made sure it had a seat at the table. And now I'm curious, what would you have done in that situation? Would you have let it go, avoided the hassle, stayed out of it? Or would you have walked into that room the same way I did? Calm, prepared, ready to say, hey, something's not right here. Because situations like this, they're not as rare as people think. And the line between not my problem and this could become my problem real fast, it's thinner than it looks.